Welcome to Veoli's webinar on total waste management. My name is Jim Dyke-Ice. I'll be your moderator today. And before we start, we're going to just do a quick little poll. This will give other people a chance to join in. So we just want to learn a little bit about our audience. So if you would, just take a look here. Have you done the dreaded dumpster dive, also called a waste audit? So we'd like you to just take a moment and let us know where you stand on this, and we'll run this just for 10, 15 seconds to see where people are. All right, if you're just joining us, we've got a poll open at the beginning here. This will allow us to, Karen and Michelle, to know a little bit about where people are in the audience in your path towards total waste management. All right.
The results in. We used to call them source separation audits, just to make it sound fancy. Same concept.
All right, we'll let it go for about another 5 seconds here. All right, get your vote in. All right, I'm going to close the poll. All right, thanks everybody. So we had 40% yes, 51% no, and 7% planning to do it soon. So about half and half. That's our audience today. So thank you everybody for joining in on that. We'll get started with our introduction. So our two speakers, Karen Ockford and Michelle McIntyre. So Karen's the general manager of the Veoli Resource Solutions Group, where she manages the service and operational aspects of the total waste management business in the United States. Karen has over 30 years experience in the hazardous waste business, including sales and sales management. Michelle McIntyre is the National Business Development Manager for the Resource Solutions Group. She's responsible for establishing new total waste management partnerships across the United States. Michelle has over 20 years experience in the industry and has held a variety of roles in her 12 years with Veolia, including serving as an implementation manager, and some of that will come out in her presentation. Just a few housekeeping comments before we jump in here. Michelle and Karen are going to walk through the content that you saw. We'll have 10 to 15 minutes for your questions at the end, and we would like you to use those, submit those via the chat. Good. I see some people already are in the chat. The chat is private, so Karen and Michelle and I see it, but you won't see responses from other people. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive a YouTube link and the slide deck probably at the end of the day. I may move if I go back up here, I may pop us around a little bit like this so that we don't cover up content on a few slides. So there's not something wrong. And I will probably turn my camera off when Michelle and Karen are going through the bulk of the content. If we have a technical difficulty, for instance, if I see a bunch of you chatting that you can't hear or see us, I'll hit a reset button and everybody would come back on. Probably takes about 15 seconds. So we can jump into just a quick overview of what we'll do today. I'll give a couple slides on who Veolia is. We don't presume that all of you know. And we'll then jump into the meat of the presentation with kind of defining what we think total waste management is. Obviously, different people have different understandings. Some steps that you can take now. It looks like over half of you are still, maybe on the front end of this process. So that should be very useful for you. And then how partnerships work, which is a way that we have seen to be very successful for our clients, and some lessons learned over implementation over these last several years. And then, of course, as I said, we'll get to your questions at the end. So at all point, whenever you got one, just pop it in on the chat, and I'll be monitoring those and make sure that we get those to Karen and Michelle at the end. My legal slide to make our attorneys happy. We're not really giving any legal advice on regulations, for instance, but it would just say, hey, if you've got questions, talk to your own environmental health and safety attorney. So very quickly, this is where I have to move us around here a minute. So Veolia is a $30 billion global company in three primary businesses: water, waste, and energy. and we have 181,000 employees globally, and that number is about to go up when we close on the acquisition of Suez. In the North America zone, which is the United States and Canada, over on the left, about 7,000 employees and about 4%. That represents 4% of the workforce and $2 billion in revenue. And total waste management is offered globally. I know that we have it in other countries. In the United States, Total Waste Management is headquartered, as you see here, in our Westland, Michigan office, and we deliver that service nationally from these other locations that you can see on the map. In addition to Total Waste Management programs, Veolia offers a broad range of on-site services and treatment and disposal solutions with a focus on sustainable circular economy offers. We'd love to talk with you about any waste challenges that you have. You can always visit our website and check us out. So now on to today's topic. Michelle and Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jim. I'm so excited to be here. I like to keep it interesting, and we do talk fast. I have a note here that says slow down. We'll walk, not run through the content. There's so much we could go through. We're just sort of scratching the surface in terms of what total waste management is and what it could be and what you're looking to accomplish, right? So, speaking from the primary, my primary career has been in total waste management. So we've kind of lived it all, the evolution, at least I have for the last couple of years. So just to throw you a loop, we're going to start with what it's not. What is total waste management not? That's a mouthful, but so generally, and again, this isn't our experience, what we've seen and kind of what the trend has been towards, and especially with COVID completely changing how we all do business. Really, it's not driven by one factor, right? So just looking for the lowest price overall, or just looking to focus on compliance. It really has to be driven by what you'll see and coming up here, those couple of major drivers is kind of checking some boxes. It's not going to be broken into a bunch of scopes of work, a bunch of waste suppliers. The name Total Waste Management essentially is describing exactly what it is. You're looking for one partner to work with when it comes to managing all your waste. You're not going to be excluding big giant chunks of services, right? Again, that sort of goes along with what I just said about having someone as your primary waste partner. And then again, it's really taking a step back and looking at it in terms of the total cost of ownership as opposed to going out to get the single lowest price on every single item. It's really not the focus of what a total waste management program is. Now, of course, again, everyone's a little different. Every customer, your organization may define it slightly differently. But again, this is just in our experience what it's not, right? And what it's moving towards. So just to transition there, what is total waste management? I'm going to start with blue. I'm not wearing blue. I'm usually wearing blue. It's my favorite color, not even close. But what is it? So if you look into blue, it's exactly what I just described. You're going to be looking for one partner to manage recycling, your general solid waste, and of course, looking to shrink that, right? Hazardous, non-hazardous, medical waste, universal, anything and everything, from the banana peel to the most hazardous waste you got. So there's other add-ons that can be, kind of thrown into that scope of work in terms of equipment, labor, all those components are going to be in there generally in one way, shape, or form. But keeping in mind, again, it's all inclusive, total, right? Seems simple. Moving to the yellow there, data, right? So it just goes hand in hand. And as you get here, this is all one big puzzle to us, right? You're putting all those elements together. So the data obviously is so critical because just moving towards understanding, where are you right now? What kind of streams do you have? How are they treated? Looking at those key elements of consolidating all your data. So that is a huge value add when you're talking about total waste management programs, because you can't track progress. You can't move the needle if you don't know where you're starting from. So going along with that is those key performance indicators, right? So it's going to vary based on maybe, your site, your industry, what your stakeholders are looking to accomplish. We see some variability, but there's some KPIs that are kind of, that go without saying, right? Cost, cost per unit, things like that. Percent landfill, percent recycling, percent total, or you're driving your total waste number down too. So there's some commonalities we see, but also those just are really all tied in so closely with having that consolidated data. So not having to have your folks gathering data from 10, 20, 100 different, places. Probably 100's a bit exaggerated, but never know these days. So moving along to the green, and it's green for a reason, right? Continuous improvement is going to be the element of starting place, collecting the data, and then how are you going to move it? How are you going to accomplish the goal, whatever it might be? A lot of your organizations are probably looking or have already set some high level sustainability goals, right? So customers might come and say, I've got this global goal put in front of me that says I'm going to be zero landfill by 2025, 2030, whatever it might be. And also key it along with increasing my recycling and, decreasing total waste, however, it might be defined by your organization. So, total waste management essentially is looking for that partner to help you basically align with those goals and drive them forward. Because let's be honest, I was an on-site engineer for many years in a facility as well. I honestly think that waste sometimes was unfortunately the last thing I had to think about because I was worried about permits, things that could, that were super critical from a compliance standpoint, right? Now, not that waste isn't, but air, water, like every single day occurrences that were basically drawing my attention. So reduction in your total cost of ownership. I always make a joke that says, not one of our customers says, I would like to spend more money on my waste program, right? I mean, that's just not a thing. That doesn't matter what you're talking about outsourcing. The goal is going to be obviously to reduce the cost that you're spending and whatever it might be. So, and then waste reduction and elimination, I sort of hinted at that too, but obviously for our customers, that's going to be a big driver, right? Not only moving to a zero landfill, but like eliminating waste from even being generated in the first place, right? So it doesn't sound easy to me just because I know I live it every day. It's often a very complicated process, right? So big changes. And then lastly, in the orange/orangey red, we all have a different, we all think it's a different color in our team. So is the expertise, right? To accomplish big picture goals, you're going to look for a partner that's going to have that expertise, right? When it comes to not only compliance, but also innovation, R&D. Are there new technologies out there? I mean, absolutely slowly, but surely, as we move towards more sustainable culture and options out there, absolutely. And getting creative, having that understanding of how waste is generated, how you can reuse it, how you can eliminate it, looking for that kind of tying together the element, which is expertise. So someone who only does waste, right? So that is what total waste management is. Again, not every single program is going to be exactly the same. I think that's part of the beauty of total waste management as well, is the flexibility in it. However, again, in our experience, generally we see some common drivers amongst the folks, our organizations, our customers who are looking to invest in a total waste management program. First being a simplification, right? Again, looking to reduce the employees' time on site spent managing waste. So we just I think Jim said I was an implementation manager. I chuckled because still right in the middle of it, actively launching some new programs, which is wonderful. That's what we're here for. So we just had a conversation, a great example. The customer said, you know what? I spend 0 hours on the phone talking to, A, B, C, and D. It's glorious. I'm working on, whatever she needs to do on a day-to-day basis because our team is managing those transactions, right? So reducing your quantity of suppliers, your time spent tracking down invoices, rebates. Oh my goodness, we say rebates in our organization, we all go, yikes, because it's a tedious, very important, but tedious, hard process too. So when I say rebates, I mean, when you sell cardboard, you sell metals, you're going to receive some money, obviously some revenue coming in. So making sure you're getting the most out of it, right? Someone to track all that and take that burden off of your employees. And then again, hand in hand, you can't separate those two, simplifying it in terms of your data. So again, data is all consolidated. It's all in one spot. Any and all kinds of waste, for the most part, right, is going to be tracked in one sort of central repository, and however that may look is going to depend on the partner you choose. Not only that, but also reviewing that data, monitoring it. Once you have it all in the one spot, we've had customers say, I had no idea how much I was spending on my waste programs until you put it together for me. No idea. that's obviously a very important factor, right? To figure out where you are, the starting point, and where you want to be. So, and those KPIs, again, it's so important to be able to have, I think for probably most of you would understand, the senior leadership team, however that looks in your organization, to say, snapshot in time, here's where I started, here's where I want to be, and here's where I am. Percent recycled, percent landfilled, percent to budget, right? So again, having those high level, basically we call them KPIs because they're going to judge the success of your program, right? That's what you want to achieve. So very critical. And that's a driver for, there's not a single customer that doesn't want to look at that, from our experience. So, and then again, KPIs are almost always tied into sustainability when we're talking total waste management. Just makes sense, right? So how are you going to get there, right? So if you have a 2030 zero waste to landfill goal, for example, doesn't mean you flip the switch tomorrow and, quite frankly, usually pay a lot more money, right, to do so. So it's stepped, it's incremental, it's looking at things holistically, right? So achieving those sustainability goals are going to be measurable and targeted. So maybe you do, depending where you are, when you have your baseline, 10% every year. So it's sort of looking at that. There's all of our customers have that element of sustainability and moving the needle, right? So, and then lastly, again, it all kind of ties together because you're not looking at things in a snapshot in time for total waste management. You're taking a step back and going, I want to look at the future. How do I achieve my goals? How do I look at the future of our programs and environment and sustainability all together, right? Tapping into that expertise. So not just trying to grab the lowest cost. And of course, cost is a driver. We're in the business world. We get that. However, you have to look at it as an investment, right? And we'll get to a little bit about the partnerships and what we mean by that. But essentially, it's kind of it is. You're investing in each other when you look into a total waste management company, right? So that is the common drivers of what we see for total waste management programs. So what can you do? How do you move this thing forward, right? So I think I mentioned I spent the bulk of my career doing these. This is just kind of a snapshot. There's these couple of slides probably entail months of work, let's be honest, right? So we understand, we wanted to give you an idea of what to start thinking about if you're moving towards understanding, is there a consensus? So step one, right? The stakeholders in your organization, are they looking to invest in it? You have to have that majority consensus. It doesn't mean every single person. We're talking about human beings, right? Not every person is going to be on board, but you get the 80% that understands, yeah, this is the direction I think we should move. I think it's best for our company. The procurement folks and EHS folks have got to be on the same page. It is generally, in my experience, just a recipe for disaster if those two main giant stakeholders aren't on the same page. They just have to be. And then the local facilities is where, obviously, again, every site has their own personality. If you're dealing with a lot of sites, you know this. So having the majority consensus for most of the sites is still pretty important. So, and then I hinted at this earlier, but step two, a baseline. What do I mean by baseline? Well, basically, again, it's going to be a snapshot of where you are right now in your waste, journey, if you will, I suppose. So generally, we look at a year, the last year, right? Sometimes we take an average of 2 years if there's a lot of variability in your operations. It could be, absolutely. Especially with COVID year, we kind of threw that one out the window and went, that doesn't really represent, hopefully, what life is going to be like. I don't know yet. I don't think anybody does. But it's going to be your waste and recycling, identifying what you have on site, where is it going now, who does it go to, what kind of container is it in? That's often missed too. So I have cardboard. Okay. How is it packaged, right? Is it compacted, baled? Is it loose? Is it stacked on a pallet? Right. So all those elements. And if you've like me been doing this and having to respond to some of these opportunities, you have to be very specific. I think is probably the message here. Be specific as you can. Equipment is almost not always, but is probably the number one element that's missed. Who owns the equipment? And by equipment, it could be a compactor, shredder, a baler, if you know what that means. It's a piece of equipment that makes cardboard into cute little cubes that makes it more marketable and transports, obviously, densification. So people forget about that element, unfortunately, and go, oh, you're right, I lease that, or I don't know I don't know who owns it. Also terribly common. Pictures are going to be really important. So if you're generating a waste baseline, and there's an element I'll get to in a moment here, but if you're looking to use technology, snap some pictures, snap some videos, goes a long way for us on the other end, trying to understand what that area might look like, right? So recently we had a customer who he took 25 videos of all the waste areas. Now he may be on the excessive end, right? Extremely helpful. We've had people wear GoPros around safely, of course, I would say, following all safety rules as a no-brainer. But you can use some elements of technology. We've had to get creative over the last year or so with COVID, unfortunately, to garner some of that information. So equipment, you must check that box. Make sure you take note of the quantity as well. Labor, right? So again, one of those elements that people sometimes miss is who's doing what? How does the waste get from point A to point B, right? So you're not going to have all the information up front, but if you start thinking through, well, this facility has outsourced labor that does A, B, and C, moves the trash, segregates the recyclables, that kind of thing. It gets you thinking about the differences and the processes of handling materials at individual facilities too. So who does the manifest, right? All those elements of starting to think through basically what your scope of work is going to look like, right? That's the next step. So, and then total spend and total rebates. Now, you may not share this with a potential partner. That's sort of a open-ended. We have customers that do it both ways, but probably for your own volition, you want to know what is your spend if you can put your finger on it, right? Maybe easier said than done. That's for sure. And that's sometimes how the total waste management partners come into, right? Setting up that baseline to figure out where are we starting from and what are you spending on it. So another one, 3, develop that scope of work. I already hinted at this, but again, probably the number one question I ask folks when we start that conversation about total waste management and what it looks like is what are you trying to accomplish? So you may be able to take some of the things that we hinted at with the drivers and go, yeah, I want this, I want this, I want this. What are you trying to accomplish, right? You want your sustainability goals met. I do want to see a reduction in my total waste generated. I want to see efficiencies, things like that. I want to make it easier for my folks who are on site. So again, thinking through what your main drivers are and identifying them are going to be pretty critical. So some sites are going to have some very specific needs. I need someone to come in here every single week and clean out my sump, whatever it might be, right? Just sort of working through some of those things. Do the best you can to identify upfront what those are going to look like. So what locations are included? Seems like a simple question, but sometimes it's not, right? Things change in the business world. Sites get added, sites get sold off. I mean, we can relate to that. So making sure you understand what you're going to include. And then the deliverables. So based on what your drivers are, that's generally going to dictate what your deliverables are in terms of the data and the waste reporting, how much time you expect someone to be on site, for example. We'll show you some models, but maybe you have a technician who's there every single day, once a week, whatever it might be. So, and then your KPIs, I mean, there's no need to have extremely specific. Some folks do. They have an exact idea of what they're looking to monitor and measure. A lot of times for us, we see that it's kind of outlined in the beginning, and then we really hone in once we get working and get the contract up and running. Because I always say this, but you don't know what you don't know sometimes going in. So that's okay to have those as a draft way up front. And then think through, are you willing to accept some sort of alternative cost approach? Again, I think it's partly in relation to COVID, but the evolution of what we've seen over the last, I'd say, couple of years has really progressed fast in terms of not taking months, 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes to go through every single waste line item and price every single thing. Again, I go back to, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Are you trying to save $100 on, you know what I mean, one line item? No, you're trying to drive big picture changes and savings. So that's where your head needs to be at. Like, are you willing to accept alternative approaches? Because you can move a lot faster, quite frankly, as opposed to taking 6 months and coming from a team who's had to respond to 10,000 line items. Quite frankly, it's extremely difficult and time consuming, and the value just isn't there a lot. So things to think through, right, when you're developing those. So.
And Michelle, I think another part of that is if it takes so long, then the data isn't even correct anymore.
You got to start all over anyway.
Yeah.
So nobody wants that, right? So yeah, great point, Karen. I can think of about 100 examples of that. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, quite frankly. So step 4, I hate, no lying here. Everybody who knows me knows that dealing with the T's and C's isn't my favorite part of my job, but it's a necessary part of negotiating, right? Payment terms, how long are we, are you considering 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Not really a thing generally, but you never know. And the timeline that you're considering, also pretty critical for folks to understand, mobilization and implementation timeframes. There's a lot of things that will go into making that sort of final timeline a reality, but just giving an idea of what you have in mind, at least initially, right? So, and then let's see. Site visits. Oh, I keep mentioning COVID. I mean, I'm personally, of course, completely tired of it. Who isn't? But are you going to be able to accommodate those? If not, you can start using some of those elements of technology. GoPros. I mean, we've had all Google glasses, but not a Google glasses advertisement here, but pretty effective, all things considered. Coming from me personally, who couldn't travel over the last year and a half, being able to actually see what's happening in a facility is extremely valuable. So now, if you don't have site visits, just be a little bit prepared that your responses that you get aren't going to be as specific, because folks like us, we generate ideas by looking at what you do right now. How is it handled? How are you moving it? Kind of back to that, who's touching what in your facility, right? From a waste perspective. So new ideas are generated out of seeing operations. It just makes sense, right? So if you do allow site visits, a couple tips, right? Prepare the local stakeholders. I know I personally shown up at a facility and had them go, "Who are you and why are you here?" So nobody wants that. We all have need to, travel sometimes to be there. So obviously we want to make sure everyone's time is being used, the best way possible. So 2 hours is kind of the going rate for time needed at a decent sized facility, right? For most facilities. And I always say, it seems like a no-brainer to me too, but make sure you allow time in the beginning for Q&A. So if we're traveling to be there, or, whoever's local, sitting down can alleviate some of that time spent later asking questions in writing, because having a conversation is way better than putting a question in writing 100% of the time without fail. So, and then lastly, do some homework. This is another element that is challenging often, right? So do you have any contracts in place now? Is there termination clauses? Did someone sign something at a site that they shouldn't have? That never happens, I know, but maybe it did. So are there leases in place for equipment right now that can, what are the clauses? Just look through some of those elements in terms of what you need to know from an unfortunate kind of time back to those T's and C's conversations. So yeah, do your homework. And welcome back, Jim.
Yeah,
there he is.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.
Just taking a little mid-break here. Please continue to submit some questions via chat. We've got a couple coming in so far. And I'd like to do just one more poll before I believe Karen's going to walk us through how partnerships work. So we've got a poll up now. Where are you now in this process? Some of you, obviously, I think we're about 40% had not done a dumpster dive. So you're considering it. You're maybe building an RFP. It's currently out for bid. You're evaluating offers. You're rolling it out, or been there doing that. So please just take a couple more seconds here, and I'll kind of give us a response. And I wish that our platform, I don't think that you can see the response, but I'll run through it here. So give it another, let's say about 10 seconds to get your vote in. All right. They're still coming in. This is great information. Appreciate you doing this. All right. I am going to close the poll. I think we've had pretty good participation. All right. So a bit surprisingly, that the biggest one, 65%, is the first one. They're considering this program. That's why they're here. The next largest was been there doing that. So we're at both ends of the spectrum. There you go, Karen and Michelle.
Hey.
Thanks, everybody, and
like
we can continue on, and I'll go ahead and jump out of this again. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and thanks, everybody. Good morning. It took me a while to be able to say good morning, so I'm happy to do so. So as Jim mentioned in the bio, and you can read about it, I'm in my 30th year with Veolia, 28 in hazardous waste specialty, and the last 2 in total waste management. And I have to say, it's really revigorated my career. So I'm very excited to be in this sector and work with people like Michelle, who have such incredible experiences from boots on the ground to actually being a partner on the other end for managing total waste management. So it's been a great 2 years, and we'll continue forward. So how do partnerships work? Well, now that we've given you some definition of what we believe total waste management is, and of course you're going to define it yourself, but these were just some things that we wanted to share with you. And you've actually received stakeholder engagement, and you're ready to move forward, and you've identified, as Michelle outlined, your scope of work tentatively and your deliverables and some of your locations. You now have to find somebody to help you get to where you need to go. This is where you come in and you look for a waste partner, and I'm calling it a waste partner and not a supplier. You've already heard, and since so many of you have already are in the process or been there, done that, or thinking about it, this is a really key area. And as Michelle said, it's really has evolved over the last couple of years, where while the line item is extremely important, looking at it in totality has really helped with the process, speed the process up, but just not gotten in the way of like a year of going line by line and dollar by dollar. Having a partner will really help you tweak your program, understand what your baselines look like, provide you with some guidance on, what deliverables may or may not work for you. So again, you want to work with a partner who is just in tune to what you're doing, but also flexible in the management of how you want to move forward. So some things that we've seen is you start a bundle of 5 locations in a region, so a bundle of locations, and perhaps you just go after that and you decide what is needed for those 5 locations. Or you say, I'm going to look at the management of, all of North America. But just being flexible with not only what your goals are and how you're going to attack it, but also the timeline of it and actually the format and what it looks like. The other part that's really important is just being flexible on the cost model. Michelle talked a little bit about that. I mean, everybody's sensitive to costs. Some of the drivers of sustainability wind up increasing your costs, but then you have to look for efficiencies and other ways to balance it out. So again, flexibility in that approach is extremely important. And you would want your partner to be transparent with you as you are walking down that lane. I think alignment is a huge part of this. If your partner understands exactly what your goals and your targets are, they can be laser focused to help you get there, and they need to be laser focused. And you don't want to set up 30 KPIs to start with. That is just not manageable. So once you set up your KPIs and your targets that are set usually by corporate, and your goals of sustainability by X period of time or whatever the goals are, you'll want to make sure that your partner is totally aligned and understands what these are, whether it's sustainability for your KPIs, services, costs, whatever those drivers are that we've been talking about throughout the presentation. And I think what's important too, that a partner, for it to work, you want it to be mutually beneficial for both parties. So again, as Michelle stated, we're looking at things more in the totality now. And, yes, COVID impacted that a bit, but also, again, offering maybe more to the partner, more sites, more opportunities, as well as what's beneficial for you is moving towards your goals, making sure that you can reduce some overall costs, making sure that you're hitting your KPI targets. So again, you would want it your partner to be in it with you and walking step by step. Total waste management is a long process. I remember in hazardous waste, here's your inventory, right? So you have 10 drums, 4 drums, 3 drums, a cubic yard box. Oh, and I have a cylinder. And then you have to come back and ask, what is that cylinder? But once you get through that, you line it all up, you figure out your outlets, make sure you're in line with everything and set a date and you move forward. Very quick in the transaction. Total waste management is a lot of transactions and it takes over a period of time. So, you want to make sure that you're picking the right partner. So you've heard some of these things. So what should you expect from your partner? Well, this should bring you ease of management. With one partner, you're going to consolidate all of the suppliers that are currently on site doing multiple tasks, from shredding paper to, RMW waste to your common trash to, your hazardous waste, and having one single partner who can give you a single point of contact to get all of that under one umbrella. A lot of people say, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. And quite honestly, I understand that, especially, again, my background. But I think it's important to understand, to make an effective program, you would want to put as much as you can under the umbrella, because it's going to drive so many things between your data and your sustainability. But also, one really big factor that's very helpful for the customers is that you can receive consolidated invoicing. So instead of processing 10 invoices, per month, you'll be processing one invoice that'll have all 10 different waste sectors on it. And perhaps you have to divide it by buildings. So you might have 2 consolidated invoices. The point is, your procurement team and your AP team is not managing multiple suppliers' invoices, payment issues. Did I even get my invoice yet? So the partner's responsibility is not only to just manage the suppliers, but also to make sure that we're reviewing the invoicing for you and making sure it's accurate. You'll want to partner too with waste expertise. I mean, almost everybody has some type of regulatory aspect to it. It doesn't matter what type of waste it is. There's regulations for all of our waste streams that we touch, right? So you'll want somebody who has a proven track record for managing waste of all types. Obviously, it's helpful if they can self-perform some things. If they own and operate disposal or recycling facilities, that's always helpful. You'll want to make sure that you can reach out and look at the history of those facilities and, for the company that you're looking at. What comes along with managing third-party facilities and transporters is the auditing piece. So think about this. And I have an example in my head of a customer that we have that has 100 contractors under one agreement. So we're now managing the 100 third-party suppliers. We're managing the contract, managing the insurance component, and monitoring the regulatory compliance of it. So, make sure that that's a deliverable that you should expect, and that's something that's very useful. And if you think about the volumes of suppliers that you can touch, especially of multiple facilities, it's almost staggering if you sit back and think of how many suppliers are within your waste that touch your waste within all of your plants. Data, we can't say enough about it. We continue about data. The deliverables are data on time, data consolidated, data with reporting, data analysis, right? So you want to look at the data. It's great to have data, but if you're not looking at it and evaluating it and then making some efficiencies based on what you see, then what's the point of the data? So data is very important to the total waste management program. It helps just, again, identify areas of improvement that you can do best practices across the board. So we can't say enough about data. And with that, like I said, continuous improvement. So these two go hand in hand. So with the data, you can track, okay, am I reaching my goal? Have I met my goal? I know of some companies out there who have less than 1% of their waste can go to landfill, and they have been successful, and they are large plants. So it can be done. It's just understanding where it is, and like Michelle said, taking bits and pieces and figuring out what's the roadmap to get you there. And then, as I said, best practices, sharing that among, multiple plants. So if something works over here in, the northeast region, it very well could work in the southeast region. So again, that's really important to work with a partner who's going to actually give you these things. You should expect these things from your partner. And again, we've led a lot up to this, but I am going to ask Michelle, is there anything you want to add to anything here?
No, I just think the flexibility, I say this a lot, but the flexibility, I think if you go to the next one, Karen, flip over just sort of, I think that probably the other question we get asked so much is, how does this work? In terms of, get some data, we look at it, right? How can we make this work? So we have some examples of sort of, again, when I first started, I'm going to mess with Jim's head, but when I first started, I was in the middle. So I started on a site, one big site. Basically, that's completely outsourcing. You've got a team of people there, right? That was the old model. As we move forward, there's been some kind of hybrid and newer models that have kind of peaked and really have been the focus of what we do now. So on the left-hand side, you have a partnership, right? Or a bundle of sites, as Karen mentioned, that says 5 plants and then this group or this business unit, right? There's mostly management off-site, but we'll have some time on site. Obviously, we garner ideas. We look at efficacy of what we've implemented, that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean we don't come visit your site, right? It just means that there's not someone there every single day or in a regular interval. It's hard to say. So that on the left-hand side is sort of a little bit off-site approach, if you will. The middle there is someone's on site. We still have many of these programs as well, where there's a person, a team, perhaps an army of 60 some people that report to that location every single day because of the scope of what's going on at that facility, right? High volume, high transactions, just a lot of waste and resources that are byproducts that are coming out of there. So complete outsourcing, that's sort of the middle. And then the hybrid is really a combination of those two models. So we have one contract where 23-ish site, it changes between month to month how many sites they have, where there's a number of sites who don't need someone on site every day. So it's a little bit of the off-site management. But then they also have very large complexes where they do a lot of the heavy, high volume manufacturing that do necessitate an on-site person, management and labor component. So again, having someone, a partner who can be flexible in kind of melding to what each individual site or bundle of sites needs is probably the best option for whatever makes sense for your organization. So these are some examples of how it can work from a kind of a management operational perspective. So I'm sorry, I just jumped right in there, Karen. I hope you don't
No, that's perfect.
I'm going to jump right into the lessons learned. I think I mentioned earlier, I can't remember a time when I wasn't implementing something. I guess that means that's a good thing, right? Karen is my manager, so if I wasn't, then I'd be doing something wrong. But so congratulations, all that stuff we talked about. You've decided to make the jump. You've figured out what your scope is, and you've sketched it out. You've identified that, almost perfect waste partner that exists. Here's some of our lessons learned. Now, I could probably go on for 2 years about how to launch these programs. It's really evolved over the course of the last couple of years, especially. But the number one thing I would suggest that as you move forward and implement is communication over communication. 9 times out of 10, when we start our program, I'll set up weekly calls, and the customers and the sites will say, we don't need it. Always need it. At the end of a call the other day, I was on the customer said, wow, you know what? It's a good thing we have these. It's absolutely essential. It's a good use of my time. Be on point, be clear, be consistent, set an agenda. It sounds like so basic, but how many meetings do we all go to where there's no agenda? Be respectful of people's time, when especially, for us, for our customers, is incredibly critical. So, and that goes internally for your organization, making sure that you're communicating with those stakeholders, what's happening, when is it happening, and who do I talk to, all those things too. So allow ample transition time. Don't try to do too much at once. I've been there a long time ago. It can be a disaster. The last thing you want to do is disrupt anything for those facilities. So Make sure you review those contracts, know upfront before you start making changes about termination. Think about the equipment. That will dictate the time. If you're replacing a piece of equipment, especially now, the timelines have just been, just like everything, extended. You can't get anything anymore. So official notification is critical to both the incumbent provider or providers, right? Official, in writing, no questions. And then a letter of authorization for your new partner to move forward. I use it 100 times in the beginning of the contract. It's absolutely critical to make sure that they have authorization to talk to any of your current suppliers about anything and everything, depending on the scope, right? So develop an implementation plan. This should probably be the primary agenda item, right? During your meetings, hint, hint. I still have to tell myself, go in there every week, update the implementation plan. It's tedious, but it keeps you on point. You lose sight of those little details. And as we've gone through, I used to have, I don't know, 100 items. I probably have like 400 now. Things you learn as you go, make sure you're learning and evolving and updating. It's very critical. Make sure you have target dates. And then sometimes targets aren't good enough. Sometimes it's thou shall, right? Hard and fast date has to be in there too. So unfortunately, it's just the way it is. We're all really busy and we have 10 different jobs. So sometimes it's a necessity. A phase approach, I think, is, depending on the scope, again, it all depends on that, is generally the best approach. So what I mean by that is prioritizing sites by however you see fit, right? So some may have contract ending. Obviously, those are priorities. Some may have more needs, or sometimes there's compliance issues that customers have asked us to jump right in and, hey, we know we need help here. Can you get in there sooner? So going methodically, group by group by group. So sometimes, you're talking, a couple hundred sites. It may take a year to launch those in the right methodical way. You can't just snap your fingers and just go live. It would be obviously irresponsible. So don't overdo it. Just get the services off the ground, ensure continuity at those facilities, that things are still going out the door. And then you can jump to that next phase. I always tell customers, if we can make a change, with minimal disruption and save you money, or make some efficiency gains right up front, absolutely. But you can't change everything all at once. That's just a recipe for disaster. It doesn't matter what it is. So, but just trying to temper those expectations will be a good, kind of a good message, I would say, to your internal stakeholders, especially. So, and outline your processes. You can save a lot of time. I love flowcharts. I have lots of flowcharts, visual, one page, what to expect for those, especially internal stakeholders, to say, you're going to do A, B, and C in this order. Here's your time. You can really save some time for yourself and some headaches later on. 80% of people will look at it, 20% won't. Right? So human nature. Make sure you have an agreement in place, site specific, if there's something that's, an outlier at a local site, like a cleaning project or whatever it might be. So, and then make sure they understand how the cost structure is going to be communicated, right? So what are people sensitive at the site to? Costs, of course, and compliance, those immediate kind of non-starters. So just outline your processes and make sure that you kind of have it lined out. That probably just encompassed just 20 years of heartache and pain and successes and minor failures, right? So what we thought we'd show you, in lieu of me and Karen and I continuing to talk at you, we thought we'd just show you a really short video that really serves as a case study. So very shortly, you'll see exactly who we're talking about. It's a case study from a customer that it was an ask for a basically message for all of their internal and external stakeholders in North America. And I'll just let the video speak for itself here. I'm going to mute myself.
We all generate recyclables in our homes. Paper, cardboard, plastic, glass, and metal can all be recycled. When you separate these items from garbage and place them in your recycling bin, the value of these byproducts can be reclaimed for the benefit of the environment. For example, it takes 95% less energy to make an aluminum can from recycled cans than from raw bauxite ore. Each raw material or resource used, trees, water, power, oil, and space in a landfill, is greatly reduced. And carbon dioxide emissions, greenhouse gases, from all the transportation and manufacturing are reduced as well. Industry can recycle these items too. Just like at home, proper segregation is key to maximizing value. Think of each byproduct as input into a new manufacturing process. For example, if you make aluminum cans, you would never accept aluminum cans mixed with old cell phones. Companies rely on resource management experts, like Veolia, to manage byproducts from their manufacturing locations. Program success relies on company employees to keep recycling streams free from contamination to maximize environmental and financial benefits. One such company, Sanofi, is working towards meeting its planet mobilization goals. With the help of its employees, Sanofi North America will recycle 2,700 tons of paper, cardboard, plastic, steel, and wood in 2021. This will save 37,000 trees, 15 million gallons of water, 440,000 gallons of oil, and over 10,000 cubic yards of landfill space. Your children and the environment thank you.
All right. Get our presentation back. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks, Karen. It was very well done. Appreciate your time this morning. I can very quickly, obviously, we'll let you review this when you receive the slide deck. We'd like to get to some questions here, which I think is my next slide. Very quickly, let's see here. This may be hard, but what have been your greatest waste reduction examples? How much can I anticipate reducing my waste generation? I realize that's, so maybe they're asking for ranges, but what would you say?
I would say it would depend depend on your baseline, which again, where are you starting from, right? So, I mean, it can range anywhere from 5 to 50%. I mean, it just depends on how good of a job are you doing right now, quite frankly. So, there's a lot of success stories where, just eliminating, returning, alternate product substitutions. There's something which we've already mentioned, Sanofi. So, we're working at removing a 20-some-year-old headache, a literal headache of a waste stream that, again, just by sort of stopping, thinking through options and understanding what we've done in the past, but let's just kind of open it up, right? So I always say, it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. Let's start fresh. Don't forget the lessons learned, but taking a fresh set of eyes at things is really beneficial. And just questioning some of the processes or the thou shall rules that are kind of passed down sometimes, right? So, your corporate may say, hey, listen, we don't do that. Well, sometimes we ask, why not? Maybe some of your competitors do, kind of treatment on that kind of, so just sort of taking a fresh set of eyes is that I can't really tell you offhand because I don't know what your situation is, but obviously if you have an idea in mind, right, and maybe you do, of where your waste reductions might come from, that's always helpful to start too. And you kind of take a look at it, have someone take a look at maybe a handful of your sites and go, okay, here's where I see opportunity. And then you can kind of get an idea, but you got to have data, because the first thing I'm going to ask, or we would ask, is what kind of data do you have? You've seen the theme, I'm sure, right? So,
okay.
I wish I knew offhand.
Got another question here. What are the most common corporate sustainability goals? Is it zero landfill, volume reduction, cost reduction?
Yes. All of the above. It's where, and this is the thing, Karen alluded to it, right? So if you're handed down a budget, right, as a plan, you say, here's your budget. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, you have to be zero waste to landfill in 2025. You go, whoa. So, right, it's all of the above. And unfortunately, in the environment we're in, that's not going to change anytime fast, right? Consumers are asking for more sustainable products, period. I know I have made a lot of changes, even as an environmental professional in my life, right, in the last 5-10 years. So they look at cost, they look at zero waste to landfill, absolutely, but often it's combined with also a recycling goal. So yeah, you may have a waste, and obviously it kind of seems like a no-brainer, but that drives customers and sites and us to go, wait a second, you can't just flip everything over and burn it for waste energy. You also have to look at recycling. And of course, I'm going to ask you, what's your definition of recycling, right? So There's so many things. I mean, Karen, what else do you see? Karen,
Yeah, I mean, I just think one of the big areas is it's out there now. You know, we will be less than 1% landfill, you know, allowed by 2030. And that seems to be putting a lot of pressure on, you know, the organizations really is what's actually put on the websites, on the company's websites. Here's our sustainability goals.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Once they're there, now you have to go out and get them.
Yeah.
So
Well, they don't always consult the local stakeholders now, do they?
No.
If you're one of those people, you're probably chuckling because we've been there. We've been there. We get it. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be tempered with landfill free, recycling. Sometimes there's total waste is often a big one too. With
Yeah.
reducing
Elimination.
your overall waste generation. That's
Yep.
really goes hand in hand again if you're looking at it, because when you're going zero waste to landfill, it only makes financial sense to also increase recycling and reduce your total waste. So it would reduce your incremental increase if you're looking at one. And there's very few cases where you're not, unfortunately, in this kind of, you know, it's just based on your geography a lot too. So,
Okay.
good question.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, it varies.
Mhm.
So here's another one that may vary, right? But what type of KPIs are important to be included in the contract? So maybe like what would be the top
Yeah.
three? Because obviously there's a bunch, but what would you say are some good KPIs?
There's I almost want to pull up my screen and show you some examples because as I mentioned, we're in the implementation phase, and each customer is a little different, but they're usually going to fall into usually 5 categories, right? See if I can remember them offhand. Environment, which obviously is going to be the landfill free and percent waste or total waste generated, percent recycled. And you may have some nuance to your environmental goals. You probably should, right? So depending on what you do, there's going to be quality.
Mhm.
Quality of services delivered. Again, nobody wants to go backwards in their, obviously, the service delivery model. So that's always a key one. And it's defined a number of ways, right? It just depends on the individual customer and how they do it, right? That's going to be sort of variability in terms of your response time. Maybe there's a number of ways. Sometimes we do surveys, right? Customer surveys
Yep.
on how your service is, the quality, not sometimes, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time we do those surveys. I'm looking at our marketing guy, Rutro. Quality, what am I missing? A safety,
Mhm.
non-starter. Safety is always for us as an entity. I would highly recommend that to any organization. I mean, that there's no way around that these days. It just has to be safety. You know, no incidents, no injuries, no issues. What am I missing here? Quality.
Like
safety.
cost to budget.
Cost.
I mean,
How did I forget cost? I don't know. Cost is one on there. Yeah, absolutely.
and that
So,
kind of goes along with maybe production and, you know, just as
Right.
long as you're tracking, as production goes up, does costs go up? And if so, why? And it helps you with the spikes and things like that. So yeah, those I think are probably the biggest
Mhm.
5. And then within each of those is probably 3 or 4 factors. So
Right. Responsiveness can be one too. Some people look at, and it just depends on how many transactions you're talking, you know, and the nature of your business in terms of what acceptable response time is, right, for request. So that's one too. So yeah, also a great question. We usually sketch out some sort of high level drafts, and then you really hone in, and they'll evolve. If they're not evolving, then you're not doing something right, because things should change and progress and improve as you move forward. That's the nature of investing in a total waste management partner. Continuous or continual improvement, depending who you ask. Yeah.
Okay, we have, if you can do this in 30 seconds, because I need about 30 seconds to wrap this up. Just have them come in. Do companies combine total byproduct with other sustainability tracking, such as greenhouse gas? That's the next big frontier, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, that's a short answer. And yes, it's continually evolving. And I think that anybody who's an environmental professional understands that. And we as an entity, as you know, speaking from our experience, absolutely, because of just the nature of what we do in water, waste, and energy, it's kind of imperative for us as an entity to do that and look at not just zero waste to landfill, but you're right. As we evolve and move, it's not just about how much waste is going to your landfill, but what is the impact from a greenhouse gas and climate change and all those things. I don't think we have a choice. I think you have to start monitoring that way too. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's still evolving.
Yeah, it's still evolving.
All right. Well, thank you. We've had some more questions. We always end up getting a few more than we can get to, but I want to get everybody out of here on time. So again, thanks everybody for attending. Thanks, Michelle and Karen, for sharing your knowledge and experience. Again, check your inbox tonight. You'll get the deck and the link. Our next webinar is scheduled for around November 30 on low-level radioactive waste. And you can always watch our homepage, our website for details on that. Now, we're about to end things, but if you stay on for just a second, there's one question I think that the webinar platform provides on how we did. So if you would, just please let us know with that. And this will now end the webinar. Thank you very much for attending today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a good day.